I've been in the police 20 years and I've never been to a scene like that ever before, and just seeing the state of it, it was like something from a horror film.
They had it all. The perfect couple living a life many could only dream of. Children, luxurious holidays, expensive jewelry, designer clothes, high-end cars. Their existence seemed like a dream come true, one that others admired and envied. From the outside, they looked like a modern-day fairy tale. A fairy tale, however, that would unravel into a story of betrayal, violence, and murder. But what could have possibly driven someone to abandon a life of luxury and dive into a realm of violence and crime? What twisted motivation could lead a woman to orchestrate the brutal, 2-hour torture and murder of the man she once loved?
In the ends, loyalty's rare and betrayal bleeds. Stabbings, shootings, real stories, real pain. This is Ends Unshanked, where the silence breaks.
In 2008, Thomas Campbell appeared to have everything in place. He had a stable, full-time job, a steady income, and a secure future. He seemed content, but for Thomas, that just wasn't enough. It wasn't long before he abandoned the traditional 9-to-5, quitting his job unexpectedly. He walked away from the predictable, choosing instead to rely on government benefits. His wife, Colleen, despite also claiming income support, quietly continued working part-time, just 16 hours a week at a local clothing store. On paper, their lifestyle seemed like it would be modest at best. They should have been living within their means. But the reality was something else entirely. The Campbells flaunted a lavish lifestyle that far exceeded their declared income. They owned a fleet of high-performance cars, an Audi A3, a BMW X5, and a Mercedes C63, all with personalized number plates. It was a public display of success, wealth, and luxury, one that would raise many eyebrows. But that wasn't all. Their holidays were just as extravagant, with trips to exotic places like Cancun, Mexico, costing them over £10,000 for just a 10-night stay. Their escapes didn't stop there. Bulgaria, Gran Canaria, you name it, they were living the life of the rich and famous, and it didn't end with vacations. Their wardrobes told the same story: designer clothes, luxury accessories, expensive jewelry, everything they wore screamed opulence. It was a life of excess, far removed from their declared income, and far from the struggles that many would expect. It went on for nearly 5 years, unchecked, unbothered, and seemingly unstoppable. But the world they built was about to come crashing down. In 2014, Greater Manchester Police launched Operation Harness, a major investigation into the Campbells' suspected involvement in the cocaine trade in the Clayton area of Manchester. The pressure was mounting, and Thomas, sensing something was wrong, felt the heat closing in. His lifestyle had caught the attention of law enforcement, and he knew his time was running out. In a desperate attempt to throw them off the scent, Thomas, who had transformed his body through countless hours at the gym, rebranded himself as a self-employed fitness instructor. He presented a new identity, hoping to shift the focus from his past life, but it was already too late. Operation Challenger had already pieced the puzzle together. Behind the facade of a fitness enthusiast was a man deeply involved in a much larger network, one that dealt with the distribution of cocaine across the region. And then, it all came crashing down. The Campbell household, once the picture of success and wealth, was raided by the police. The law had caught up with them. In 2019, Thomas was sentenced to 2 years in prison for money laundering. His wife, Colleen, was also convicted and sentenced to 16 months. By 2021, both were free, but their lavish lifestyle was gone. The cracks that had formed over the years finally gave way. Colleen discovered the ultimate betrayal, the most devastating of all. Thomas had been having an affair with one of her close friends. Furious and humiliated, Colleen confronted him. The confrontation quickly escalated, turning into an explosive argument. This marked the end of their relationship. All the years of luxury, lies and what they once called loyalty dissolved in an instant. The couple who once flaunted their wealth to the world was now torn apart, but the story didn't end there. The darkest chapter was still to come. In an unexpected turn of events, Colleen found herself aligned with an unlikely ally, John Belfield, the ex-boyfriend of the woman with whom Thomas had been having an affair. Both betrayed, both enraged, and both seeking revenge. The anger and pain were palpable, and it didn't take long for them to bond over their shared hatred for Thomas. What started with a few exchanges of messages on Instagram quickly escalated into something far more dangerous. They began plotting a revenge scheme that would bring them everything they had lost, and much more. Their plan was chilling in its simplicity and brutality. They would ambush Thomas, rob him of cash, drugs, and anything of value they could find. But for Colleen, this wasn't just about money, it was personal. It was about payback, a deep, burning revenge against the man who had betrayed her in the worst possible way. Colleen, who had once been Thomas's wife, became a key player in the plan. She knew Thomas better than anyone. She knew his habits, his routines, the places he frequented. She provided the crucial details, the exact times, locations, and methods they would use to catch him off guard. Armed with this information, John Belfield set the plan in motion, gathering a team to carry it out. He brought in Stephen Cleworth and Rhys Stephen, two men who would help carry out the brutal plot. Cleworth, in particular, was assigned an invasive and dangerous task. He was sent to Thomas's daughter's school, where he discreetly placed a GPS tracker on Thomas's van. This tracker would lead them straight to Thomas's home, where the real violence would begin. The trap was set, and the countdown to murder began. While the plot to ambush Thomas Campbell unfolded, Colleen was already deep in violence elsewhere. Driven by her anger, and fueled by her loyalty to a friend, she led an assault on a woman accused of sleeping with her friend's boyfriend, an argument that quite frankly wasn't even hers to have. But that didn't stop Colleen. She arrived at the scene with 3 associates, including 2 other women. Each of them was armed with a weapon. CCTV footage captured the chilling moment they exited the vehicle, with Colleen carrying a hammer. What followed was a 90-second spree of violence. The victim was ambushed, beaten, and assaulted by the group. The attackers only stopped when bystanders intervened, horrified by what they were witnessing. It was a brutal display of aggression, an ominous warning of the violence still to come. The days dragged on as Belfield and his crew carefully watched Thomas's every move. They studied his routine, waited for the right moment, and then it came. Thomas, unsuspecting and unaware of the danger lurking just feet away, unlocked the door to his home. That's when they struck. They ambushed him, dragged him inside, and subjected him to 2 hours of unimaginable cruelty. They stabbed him. They punched him. They stomped on him with brutal force. They stripped him down to his socks, and then perhaps the most degrading part of all, they poured scalding hot water onto his bare skin, specifically onto his buttocks. It was a savage, dehumanizing act. And by the time they finished, Thomas was left barely clinging to life. He succumbed to 61 injuries in the hallway of his own home. The next morning, neighbors discovered his lifeless body. The scene was horrific, and it would be forever etched in the minds of everyone who witnessed it. Meanwhile, Colleen, now playing the part of the grieving widow, took to social media. She flooded her accounts with posts that appeared heartfelt, emotional, and raw. She wrote, 13 years and 2 beautiful children, forever grateful. I would do anything to hear your giddy laugh, or your non-stop moaning just one more time. She played the part so convincingly that no one suspected the truth. She even attended Thomas's memorial, standing side by side with his family, pretending to mourn while hiding the true horror of her actions. It wasn't long though before the police began to close in. Within 2 weeks of Thomas's death, they tracked down their first suspect, Stephen Cleworth. Belfield, however, had fled the country. Authorities believed he had escaped to Tenerife, but the search soon spread further. In March 2023, Belfield was found hiding in Suriname. He was arrested and prepared for extradition. Reese Stephen, although not directly involved in the murder, had played a pivotal role in planning and was convicted of manslaughter. He was sentenced to life in prison, with a minimum of 12 years before he could even be considered for parole. Belfield's arrest was a turning point. Once returned to the UK, he was apprehended at Manchester Airport and charged with his role in the murder. He pleaded not guilty, and he awaits trial in June 2025. One suspect, however, remains at large. As for Colleen, she initially managed to slip through the cracks. She cried with Thomas's family, telling them she still loved him, all while knowing the truth. But her mask slipped when she shared specific details about the murder with Thomas's mother, details that hadn't been made public. When asked how she knew, Colleen claimed that Thomas had visited her from beyond the grave, and that a spiritual friend had passed on the information. It was the final nail in her coffin. Thomas's mother immediately reported this bizarre claim to the police. The investigation into Colleen intensified, and her involvement was exposed. Colleen was arrested and charged with murder. Despite her attempts to downplay her role, investigators uncovered just how deeply involved she was. Surveillance footage and evidence showed her discussing the plot with Belfield. It was clear that she had not only planned but had also given them the information needed to track Thomas, including details about his daily routine, and even where he picked up his daughter. Colleen initially claimed that the plan was simply to steal 2 Rolex watches, but the watches were never found. Her defense was weak, and it did nothing to absolve her of responsibility. In the end, Colleen was sentenced to 12 years in prison, with the requirement to serve 2/3 of her sentence before being eligible for parole. The woman who once lived a life of luxury now faces years behind bars, her cold betrayal and involvement in the brutal murder of her ex-husband forever marking her legacy. A life of luxury, once so vibrant, now reduced to the grim reality of prison walls. This is the story of how a dream life turned into a nightmare of betrayal, vengeance, and violence.